Indeed, the vibration of vibrancy, how to raise your frequency. I'm so excited, y'all. Let's just dive into the next level of this. And again, I'm up here in the corner. I will have this slideshow rolling for you as we go, because it really is about how to raise your frequency. And simply, a big picture, what does that mean? It means that in life, it is all about our tuning. If you're not sure what that is there, it is a mixer, right? And a mixer is a fancy word for an equalizer, tuning up the treble and the bass. And again, like a stereo or radio, everything is available to us, all frequencies, meaning all radio stations. Whatever we tune into is the life, the emotion, the experience that we are creating. So what that means, I'm sorry to say, is that everything is available, meaning also depression, upset, and misery. That's available to us all the time, right? Yes, guilt, stress, doubt, scarcity, all of these things. And we know that these things are available because we see them in our world, right? If you're not experiencing these on a regular basis, awesome. I'm sure you know someone who is. And even if we are experiencing these periodically, good news, we don't need to. Wait though, before we get to the really good news, do you already know what I'm talking about, that anything is possible? Like, have you had an experience somehow, an awakening? Do you just have an intuition? Of course you do, because that is part of your true spiritual nature, right? So we know that anything is possible, and yet, right, is your life not completely what it could be up till this point? Right? We have been told, many of us, that if we are spiritual, if we have a spiritual practice, and we'll talk about that language in a little bit, that leads to an abundance of time, an easeful time, a body that is perfect and lean and just what we want it to be, plenty of money, right? Spiritual abundance. We have a career that is a mission, that it's a vocation that we're thrilled with, right? And this word congruency or congruence is a really important one. And what that means is that there is a sameness to what's going on the inside as to what's going on the outside, that our inner world, our values, our spiritual beliefs and experience matches what we are experiencing in the outer world. Okay? And we've been told that spirituality leads to, of course, wonderful tantric, beautiful relationships, intimate, sexual, romantic ones, and friendships in community that is spiritual and beautiful. Thing is, I don't know about you specifically. I know for me, it's not quite that simple. We don't always get all of this just because we get spiritual. All right, don't worry. Good news is coming. First, though, worse news is that we've also been told that if we meditate, right, and I will share more with you about the word meditate later, it's an important one, then everything will be perfect just by doing that, right? And remember the word incongruence a moment ago, right? Again, that's, and if you don't know these guys over here, by the way, these are called the Incredibles. I went to Universal Studios last year with my daughter, and she taught me that. And they are showing us something called imposter syndrome. And that's where our teaching or our life isn't matching what we feel on the inside. That's that incongruence, where we don't really feel like we're as wise or spiritual or loving as we should. And then we feel like an imposter in some way, right? Okay, now, what if indeed, right, no matter what we've heard, no matter how many trainings and experiences you've had, right, what if it's not all necessarily wrong? What if we're just missing some part of the puzzle, right? What if, in fact, this is the time for that? So this, what we're going into today, is for you if, right? If you're a spiritual seeker, if you're after awakening or consciousness or whatever you call that, right? If you are a spiritual entrepreneur, healer, light worker, therapist, coach, teacher, right? If you are, like I have been in my life, a personal and spiritual growth junkie, can't get enough of it, right? Including that you've taken many, many courses and trainings, yet somehow, right, there's still more. Or you just inside, you feel like, I want my life to expand and grow. There is more. Well, then this is for you. So, my friends, if you are fitting that in some way or all of that, then I encourage you to buckle up, get ready, stay with me, because this is going to be just an hour today, and we will go really deep into some important pockets. Yeah, take out of your pocket your phone as we go into deep topics, then put your phone on do not disturb airplane mode, even better, because you want to pay attention right now. Like what I'm sharing with you can change your life, because it absolutely can, right? This is time to sit up, take notes, pay attention, have some water. Don't let yourself get distracted. I promise I will make it worthwhile for you. Now, as we go into the next component of this this show, the vibration of vibrancy, I'm going to share with you just a little bit about me so that you have an understanding of why I might have something valuable to share on this topic. I'm going to do it in 3 parts, as if my life was a 3-part movie. And stage 1 on the SAD, that means standard American diet, right? And I mean, like literally, that's what I physically ate, was a standard American diet. So that's where I started out as a little boy. Not too bad. Things were going okay. But you can see by teenager, things had started to go downhill. And at that point, I was indeed fat, shy, depressed, and unhappy with life, right? Something happened, though, that was powerful for me. You know, it was somewhere in between this. I was about 4 years old. And I remember this clearly. I was at my family home in just outside of Portland, Maine. And I was in the front yard, outside, in the front yard of my home, because inside what was usually happening was a lot of fighting. Now, I had a beautiful family, loving father, loving mother, loving brothers and sisters. And yet we hadn't learned what to do with challenge or conflict. So there was love there, but what I experienced much more was a lot of pain, anger, violence. So I did what seemed the best to me as a 3.5-year-old, was go out to the front yard to kind of escape that. And in that moment, this one particular day, I'm standing out there, kind of cacophony in the house, and I look across the street, and over there, right at the same time, it was afternoon, 2 men that lived across the street were coming home from work. And, this was in the early 70s. So they were dressed in suits and they had briefcases and slumped shoulders, and they walked from their car into their house. And I just saw that and I thought, this is the case for most people in their work. I already knew that at 3.5. They weren't liking it. They weren't liking their lives. There was no enthusiasm or vibrancy. So that was the moment when the thought came to me. I don't know if I had the words, but it came to me. There's got to be more to life than this, right? And then I went on and just, did my best to survive childhood. Got to college, and this was exciting to break free of that, create my own life. And I was into philosophy and religion, English, and I was practical. I was on my way to a pre-law degree. And then I discovered psychedelics, which kind of threw me off in terms of the plan that I had. So you can see this is just after college, my first forays into something like spiritual entrepreneurship, traveling around with the Grateful Dead, selling my hippie gear, right? And that was a good little process for me. But you know what? I'm going to share a story with you, true story of something that occurred shortly thereafter. I was living in Taos, New Mexico, and I just moved out there after college to be a ski bum and working and teaching. And I, one night, it was Friday the 13th of December, and I was up in the ski valley. There was a costume party that night, and I was excited. My life was rolling. I had a new place to live down at the bottom of the ski valley, and I did what a lot of us did in those days, which was I drank a lot. And then, the night was ending. It was close to midnight. My friend said, "Don't drive, don't drive." I didn't listen, right? So I started driving down, and by this point, there was actual snowstorm happening. I'm driving down the mountain, and I start to, veer a little too much this way, a little too much this way, and then it happens so quick. What it felt like is that I had driven through a forest with trees. What actually happened, I only discovered later, is that my car swerved, then overcompensated, hit a snowbank on the other side of the road, and jumped like a race car driver, Evel Knievel style. And I actually jumped up in the air. Down below the snowbank down here, there was a river. And my car actually went up and over the river, hit the other bank, flipped over, and slid back into the river. So here I am, upside down in my car in the river, water flowing through the car, very cold water, mind you, at this point in the mountains. And my door does not open. So, managed to kick the passenger door out, get out of my car. This is all instinct, of course. And then I'm standing in the river, complete darkness all around. The water, luckily, wasn't too deep at that place. It was only about up to here. And I'm standing there in the river, have no idea where I am. Remember, it felt like I'd gone through a forest. So, blessedly, luckily, a car comes by, and it's way up there on the road. That's about a 15-foot snowbank to get up there, side of the river. So, again, I know by instinct immediately what I have to do is get up there somehow. So I go to the edge of the river, and I start to climb up, and I realize it's really slippery. So I said, okay, I got to figure this out. I got to do this. And it was a full moon, or very close to a full moon, lots of light. And I looked down to kind of gather my courage. And as soon as I look down, I see this dripping into the snow, and puzzles me for a moment. And then suddenly I realized that the dripping was the blood from my face, right? And I had cuts here in the actual eyeball, on the eyelids. So blood is pouring out of my face onto the snow. Freaked me out. I fell back into the river. I was so freaked out. Okay, so that was, sobering, so to speak. Get back up. What to do? Got to get to the top. So I just dig in and I start climbing up. I get about 14 feet up the snowbank, and then slip, slide all the way back into the river. Once again, soaking wet in the river. Now, what to do? Life, survival, instinct, go. Third time, I make it all the way to the top. And then, suddenly I'm climb over the snowbank. I'm standing in a road that's pretty much deserted. Nobody drives up and down that road at midnight. And, what to do? I had nothing to do. So again, another miracle. In a moment, a car comes by. Now, mind you, at this point in my life, not only was I letting my hair grow, I had dreadlocks down to here, a full beard, cuts all over my face, and I'm bleeding, and I'm soaking wet. I looked like a monster, right? And so, but what to do? I put my thumb out and, hoping they'll stop. And again, another miracle. They actually stop and take me to the hospital, right? I don't know if I would have stopped for me at that point. So what happened then? Show you a picture. When my car actually crashed, what happened was my dog had recently chewed through my seatbelt. I didn't have a seatbelt. My face hit the windshield, and that's the exact place where my face hit, right? My good friend, the one who told me not to drive that night, took a picture of me the next day saying, "Help you remember not to drink and drive." And indeed, I remembered. Not only that, it became a pivotal moment in my life. And I said to myself, what am I doing? What's going on with my life? I've gone obviously off track. So tried to follow what I thought I'd learned, which is, more school. I had liked philosophy, so I'll go back to school and I'll get a PhD, I thought, right? Ethics, I love that stuff. Then divine intervention. I stopped. I'd already taken the reports, the standardized testing, did well on that. I'd gathered my manuscripts. I was starting to apply to schools. And then something paused me. And what this is here, in case it's not obvious, this is a symbol of divide, a divide sign, right? somehow I knew. I didn't know that the plus sign also meant yoga, union. I hadn't gone into yoga at that point in my life, but something in me said, what do we do in philosophy? We take things apart. We analyze, we get rational, we stay in our heads, we talk about things, but does anything ever really get accomplished from that? Not sure. So somehow I stopped right on the edge of getting that PhD. And you know, I went for another couple of years of trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life. And stage 2, call awakening. That sounds a little pompous, I know. So skip over this part, that language in a way. Kundalini awakening is not a, it's not a word I knew. I had no interest in spirituality. I was against religion. I didn't know anything about meditation, yoga. None of it interested me. I was still fully on the standard American diet, including media, including beliefs. And later I learned the phrasing Kundalini awakening. And another way of saying it is I went crazy, right? I completely lost touch with the normal earthly stuff. And it was both incredibly exciting and freeing and also scary because I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what it meant. I knew there was something beautiful happening. And part of it was I saw beyond the physical form. I saw the potential that we all have, that humanity has. And I experienced it. And there was never, from that moment on, for me, a question of, is there something more than the physical or God or the divine? Not that I would have used the word God at that point. I knew it. I had the experience of it, right? But I didn't know how to live it. So after that, I got really depressed because I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go back to my old life. It was gone, right? And I'm telling you all of this, by the way, not so much to share my story. And I know my story won't be exactly like your story, yet I'm guessing that if you're here now, you have some things in common with this process. So for me, when I came out of that depression, that's when I really got into figuring out, how does this being human thing work? I got to figure it out. I moved to the Omega Institute in upstate New York, where I lived off and on for 6 years. I sold all of my stuff. I bought a little RV and just traveled around the country, working as little as I had to at normal jobs in order to keep studying and growing. I got into yoga, got really obsessed with it. Then I moved to the Esalen Institute on the West Coast, Big Sur, California. Went to live at an ashram center university in Holland, Humaniversity. Met up with my friend David Wolf, got into raw food. We hit it off and started working together, traveled around the world together for 2 years, teaching people about that. And yes, I was a personal and spiritual growth junkie. These are just some of the things that I got into: breath work, Thai massage, nutrition, transpersonal psychology, gestalt therapy, writing, fasting, all of this. I was obsessed. Whatever I could get into that felt like it would help me to awaken. And, you know, in the beginning, I wasn't that interested in teaching or working with others. That just started to happen naturally because I was learning things, right? So this led me to living in Spain. And I remember this was right, for those of you into astrology, right on my Saturn return. And my mother said to me, Danny, that's what she still called me, Danny, when are you going to get a real job? And so lucky. I didn't know these words that are coming in a moment yet. Somehow I knew in my bones the truth of them, though. Abraham Lincoln said, if I had 2 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first sharpening my axe. And in the same way, I knew, despite, you know, for my mother, a real job meant, you know, doctor, lawyer, something like that. But I knew for myself that learning how I work, my psycho-emotional mental world, was the most important thing I could be doing, because wherever I go, that's, my life is coming from that, right? And that led me to stage 3. Now, stage 3 started, I was actually on one of those radical therapeutic events at Harbin Hot Springs. And I had been traveling around with an enlightened teacher, a guru, and I just knew that was over. It came to an end, but I didn't know what was next. And I remember sitting out by the pool there, and I was sitting on a lawn chair, and I was kind of wondering and feeling a little anxious, like, what's next? And in that moment, literally an acorn fell out of the tree and landed right in my lap. And I kid you not, in that moment, 5 major things changed in my life. I got a download, and it was like the divine saying, Daniel, now this, and this. And one of those things was, it was time to stop being on the move so much. I had not lived longer than a year in a place, and that led me to move to Bali. Right? Never even been there, yet somehow that was the clear direction for me. And when I got to Bali, it was amazing for me because putting down roots allowed flowers to grow. And right away, I got into teaching and speaking and leading trainings, professional trainings for yoga teachers and raw chef and leadership. And, some of the people I've worked with, amazing people who taught me so much, and I'm so grateful that I got to serve them. Right down here, Ben and Sayuri, who both worked with me as chefs and teachers, and both ended up opening up their own raw food restaurants. There's Tara Germani, who's such an inspiration, who really did the work, and I'll explain to you in a bit what the work means, and really transformed her life. I checked in with her not long ago. She eventually moved to Sri Lanka and was doing a lot of beautiful work for many people there. In the process, I was lucky to have a beautiful little girl, my daughter Zeta. I wasn't so thrilled with the school options we had there, so little did I know how much work it would take. I started a school here together with Ibu Vero, who you see there, called The Spring. And it's what's so cool about it is I was involved for a couple of years helping it start, and now it's still running in such a beautiful way and serving so many wonderful children. Shortly thereafter, I was invited to open a center, and again, didn't know how much work it would be. Became a massive project and beautiful place that's still going now. I sold it just a couple of years ago, and so grateful for all that I learned, and so many people have benefited from that place. Really, though, the biggest thing I learned in this whole time is transformation. And it is an art, and it's also a science, and that's what we're getting into here. So a little bit more about some of the people I worked with that I'm just so lucky with. Jamie Louise here, she came to our raw chef training, ended up opening an amazing restaurant in Brisbane, Australia. And then Alexia and James there on the right side. Alexia, wonderful young woman who started a studio in Vienna, and James actually has ended up working with me, became my lead trainer for years, and is still there doing amazing work. I talked to him just a couple of weeks ago, right? And then a couple of years ago, my time in Bali came to an end, and I moved here to the land of Aloha, Maui, Hawaii, together with my daughter. And I'm so grateful now for the opportunities that we have through this way of working. Even a few years ago, y'all, I would not have believed that I could work with students and clients around the world through video technology calls in ways that it's really effective and deep and powerful, and so much easier than it used to be flying around the world and, taking weeks and months off of work to create transformation. So now let's go to the next level. And by the way, your state of being, your vibration right now determines largely what you will get from this experience. So I encourage you to right now sit up, take a big breath in. Yeah, and let it out. Go for another one, because all learning is state dependent, and how beautiful that you have the ability to make your state one that is energetic, alive, engaged right now. Right? So here's what we're getting into next. 3 big points of the rest of this training. One is the word entrainment, which I'll explain in a moment. That is the most powerful why, the motivation for doing the work. And the work, by the way, as my friend who's a marathon runner said to me once, Daniel, if you want to run a marathon, you gotta do the miles. So the work of creating the vibration of vibrancy to creating your masterpiece of a life is training. It's work to do that. I'll say more in a moment. And then the last biggest piece here is that indeed every orchestra needs a conductor. Part of what that means is if we are going to really create our life into what it can be, then we all benefit from having support, from help, someone that leads us, that harmonizes, that transmits vibration in a way that we want. All right. Are you with me? Cool. Now, entrainment, really simple. It's a word from physics, and it means that any two bodies or events, any two things that are linked across time and space will align to the same vibration. Now, if you're here, I'm guessing you're already down with the word vibration or frequency. And we know now, it's not new agey at all, that everything actually is vibration, right? The computer here, my physical body, the thoughts I'm having all have a vibration, right? A frequency. So how does entrainment work is anything that is connected will align to the same frequency. They will entrain. And it's like in a clock shop, the old school clock shop with the pendulums, those pendulums will eventually align to the same swing. Women living in a dormitory will align to the same menstrual cycle. And check it out down on the bottom right, a opera singer hits just the right pitch and the crystal will shatter. Right? This is entrainment. Why is that so important for you? Well, it's called the new science, quantum physics. And when I first got woke up to spirituality, meditation and yoga, and obsessed as I was for years and years, I was really devoted to deep, esoteric, spiritual, ancient practices. And I kind of pushed away the science of it. And honestly, partially it was because I thought it was over my head. I thought it was too complicated. When What the Bleep came out, I thought, oh yeah, that's cool, science and spirituality. But quantum physics, I didn't understand it and kind of stayed away from it. Well, somehow, luckily, that changed for me a few years ago. And I got obsessed with brain science and quantum physics and epigenetics, in part because there are so many amazing developments happening in this world these days, from the work of Bruce Lipton and Lynn McTaggart and Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden and so many others. They're taking what used to seem like a really complicated science and making it so we can understand it, which is part of what I'm doing for you here now too. So quantum physics really gives us an understanding of this same principle, that it's all about our tuning, right? What we know from this new science, which isn't that new, it's been around for 100 years, is that everything is frequency, and entrainment works such that whatever we focus on, whatever we tune into, we become, we feel, we attract to us, right? So here's a question for you. What do you see in this slide? Trick question. Well, this is the field of infinite potential, the vast darkness, the divine matrix. You can call it any of those things. It's the world beyond this dimension of space and time, right? Again, it holds every possibility, anything that we can conceive of, Napoleon Hill said, we can achieve, right? And now we know scientifically how that works. So that means that every state is available, right? We can feel like this, or we can feel like this at any point, right? We can be down on our luck out on the streets, or we can be pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. It's all available to us, right? We can be depressed and ashamed, or we can be creating a new life in any moment, right? Now, I remember when I first heard this quotation, y'all, I thought to myself, oh, no, I don't like that. No, it's about being present, right? I didn't realize the deep truth of it, that it's so accurate. The best way to predict the future is to actually create it. And that's part of what the work is that I'm talking about. Training for success is using a inward focused, eyes closed kind of process It's not meditation, it's dynamic, it's creative, it's active, and it's creating life, right? And real simple, oversimplified for our purposes today. How does that work? Here's the formula. One, you have a clear intention. And I know you've heard this before, right? Write down what you want. Yes, good advice. The more clear we get it, the easier it is to broadcast it out from the electrical system of the mind. Boom. And that counts. The thing is, what's missing for a lot of folks, a lot of the people I work with, and was for me for years too, is the second part, equally, actually more important. Because check this out, the mind, the brain, an electromagnetic field that's powerful, right? The heart, an electromagnetic field that is 5,000 times more powerful. Yes, you heard me right, 5,000 times measured, right? So the second part of this is exalted emotion, elevated emotion. So what that means is that we create a clear intention and then we feel it. That we create that feeling, that state inside ourselves so strongly. It's like we trick the brain and in a sense the universe into believing that it's already happened. And because that, we change how we feel, we change what we see, we change what we do. And quite literally, we draw to us everything we need to create whatever we want. Right? Now, if you think about that for a minute, all right, thing is, we're doing this all the time. Really important piece to know, right? Clear intention. We're having thoughts all the time. Thoughts are intention, right? Elevated emotion. That's equally true if we are worried, if we're scared, if we're afraid, if we're living in the emotions of stress, we are rehearsing a future that we don't want, okay? So if you think about that a bit, it's scary. On the flip side, right? If we learn to, and anybody can, learn to do it intentionally, do it on purpose, create it the way we want, well, then that becomes empowering, right? Okay. Now, hey, one of my favorite people, Ross Adams, when he first came to one of my trainings, he was, in his words, a mess, right? Anxious, afraid, and look, you can look at him. He's a beautiful man, and he just didn't know it himself. And I remember one of our first exercises he told me about. It was a kind of a sharing with his group. He was so afraid to do it. He was hiding in the bathroom stall, sitting on the toilet crying because he didn't want to do it because he was so afraid, right? He was hiding himself. So one of the first assignments I gave him is to wear a cape and, act like Superman. And it was so powerful for him. And what I love most about Ross is from that moment of, I don't want to show myself, I want to give up. He literally did pull himself out of all of that, from addiction to depression, anxiety, all of that. He pulled himself out. And I actually had an email from him this very day. And this is his family. You can see 2 children. They just had their second, he and Mariana just had their second child. And I love, part of what he said here is, I found my Dharma as a teacher. Dharma meaning mission, purpose, right? Amazing man. Now, again, I don't share this so much as to impress you with what Ross did, though, to give you an idea of what's possible for all of us if we actually do the work. Yeah. So this is a bit of a gross picture, I know, but hopefully it'll make the point that you already know here. And this is how it works. Information, right, like learning up in the head, is not the same as transformation. And I can say this as a boy and teenager who was fat. I knew what to do to not be fat. Eat less, eat better, exercise more. It ain't rocket surgery, right? Nonetheless, I was fat for years. So please be learning and paying attention here on the level that it's not just stuff to take in your head, it's stuff that we actually have to work with, right? So again, as my marathon runner friend said, you got to do the miles. Now, tell you something, a little bit of a pet peeve, kind of drove me crazy. So I told you, part of who I work with often are spiritual entrepreneurs. And I was checking out what someone else in this field was talking about, one of my peers recently, and I heard this. definition. A spiritual entrepreneur is someone who knows how to meditate. Right now, again, I'm not down with the word meditate so much because it means so many different things to so many different people, though we'll let it go for the moment. Spiritual entrepreneur is someone who knows how to meditate. I was like, what? No, it's not enough to know how, not enough to know about something. We actually have to do it. I'm not going to be able to run a marathon just by saying, yeah, I know how to run, right? Now, I know this is not radical information to you, right? And so I've been working with a lot of people, almost 30 years now. What's the biggest obstacle to people doing the work? Right? They oftentimes have the knowledge. There's not enough time, right? I get it. I'm a single father. I have a business to run. I have my own processes, my spiritual life. I want to enjoy things. I love learning. Time is a scarce commodity. I get it. We're all really busy these days. Right? Thing is, we all have the same amount of time, right? From Mother Teresa to Albert Einstein, right, to Maya Angelou, Malala, all of us have the same amount of time. The real question is, what are we choosing? What are we prioritizing? And hopefully, having talked about entrainment, you're getting an idea of what your priority needs to be in order to create the vibration of vibrancy. Now, a little bit more motivation perhaps for you. Incongruence, feeling this way, experiencing this, or thinking to ourselves, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, and then not doing it. Oh, it like makes a rip in our heart. It pulls us apart. It quite literally is killing us. Right? Now, to further emphasize this distinction, going back to when I was almost headed back to school for my PhD, and I thought about, wait, what do we do in those ivory towers in philosophy? We talk, right? Mental masturbation. Nothing really gets accomplished. The difference, and this is part of why when I first found yoga, I so loved it. Because yes, it's a beautiful philosophy of awakening, of life, of vibrancy. And it's also a teaching that says you must do. It's not enough just to know. So philosopher, thinking, talking, initiate, acting, doing, putting the philosophy into effect in our life. Show you a little more what I mean by this. Now, I love this research project that was done, right? And there's so much research backing up everything that I'm talking about today. Part of what I'm teaching you in this motivation is how to go beyond discipline, right? Discipline just doesn't work that well. Like this. Here was the setup for the research project. The participants were told to come into a waiting room. When they arrived in the waiting room, they were greeted and they said, in the waiting room, there was a table which had freshly cut radishes and freshly baked chocolate chip cookies that were still warm, right? You know the smell of that. And one group of participants were told, welcome, just wait here for a little bit, we'll call you, help yourself, eat whatever you would like. The second group was told, welcome, we'll be with you in just a moment. Please refrain from eating the chocolate chip cookies. Eat as much as you want of the radishes. Okay. Now, they thought that was just they're in the waiting room and the real test was coming up. So what happened is with each group, they had them wait there for a little while. And how does that work, by the way? How desirous do we get when we smell fresh baked chocolate chip cookies? Most of us, right? It takes a lot of willpower, a lot of discipline not to eat those, right? So for most people, they exerted that, they followed the rules, and then they got to the next part. Well, thank you for waiting, come on in. And what they did with all of the participants at that point was gave them some puzzles to solve, right? Little mental exercise games to do. Across the board, the results were really clear, way beyond any statistical anomalies. The people that had to use discipline in order not to eat the cookies, well, they gave up on the puzzles way sooner than the other people who didn't use any discipline. They ate whatever they wanted, right? And what that teaches us really clearly, and there are a lot of studies that show this, discipline is an exhaustible resource. We only get so much of it. And when it runs out, then we lose it. So same is true for our dynamic, creative inward process, this process of creating our life. If we have to force ourselves to do, I should do this, right, then we don't want to, most people. Discipline will run out. So part of what we are doing here today is giving you the knowledge and the reason of why it's so important to have a creative, dynamic inward process, right? Now, would now be a great time to take a huge breath in? Or would now be a wonderful time to take a huge breath in, shake your body out a little bit, right? Because when your body's alive, when it's moving, then your brain is grooving, right? So we got a little more and some of the best stuff yet to share with you here, a little more understanding of how transformation works and how your transformation works, and including why maybe it hasn't worked as well as you want up till this point. Because have you ever said, I'm going to do this, and then somehow it didn't happen, or you said, I'm not going to do that, and yet it continued to happen? Right? I've done both of those things. So a thermostat. What's a thermostat? Here, I'm in North America right now. It's summertime in Maui, so it's pretty hot here. So we'll use air conditioner as an example. If you set your thermostat to 65 degrees Fahrenheit and the outside temperature is, say, 80, right? Then your air conditioner has to work in order to create the temperature in the house to be down to 65. So your air conditioner is working. The temperature drops down to 65. Air conditioner keeps working. It brings it down to 64, 63, 62, 61. And maybe that's the point where the thermostat communicates to the air conditioner, okay, it's cold enough, stop working. Boom. Air conditioner stops, can relax. And then slowly, because it's not cooling the air, the temperature goes 62, 63, 64, 65, and it keeps going right up to maybe 60, 69 degrees. And then the thermostat again communicates to the air conditioner, say, hey, it's getting hot in here, turn on, right? And so that's how a thermostat works. The temperature will stay, you set it at 65, but it really goes to 61, to 69, stays in that little bandwidth. Why, Daniel, are you telling me about this? Very important. And that is because we all have thermostats. This is how we operate. Meaning that if we are a vibration, a frequency, we have what's called a vibrational set point, right? Marcy Smirnoff talks about this really nicely in Happy for No Reason. We all have a certain happiness level, right? In our lives, we're about this happy. And if we're cruising through our life and something really wonderful happens, well, then we get happy, right? You know, somebody says yes to us for a date, or we win the lottery, or, you know, it's a beautiful day when we wake up and we get a little happier. What happens then? In a matter of hours, days, weeks, maybe months, maybe even years, no, not even years, months maximum, we drop back down to our normal way of being. We get used to it. Right? We go back to our default set point. Same thing is true if we're cruising along in our life and something really bad happens. We get in a car wreck, we lose our money, that person divorces, whatever it is, right? We go down, we feel bad, yet in a matter of hours, days, weeks, months, we come back up to where we were. Guaranteed. You can check out the studies on lottery winners. Works like clockwork. Now, why is that? And it's the same, by the way, happiness, wealth, health, all of it is the same. We have a certain set point and we keep ourselves in that bandwidth. Why? Because there is a part of us, which we could call ego, survival part, human animal, I like to call it, that is interested in one thing only. What is that one thing? Survival. That's it. Just keep going. And so we are biologically hardwired for thousands of years to resist any kind of change. We're on the alert, even though this is not relevant for us anymore. It's part of our biological inheritance. on the alert for anything out of the ordinary because it could be dangerous. It could kill us, right? Now, good news, the flip side of that is we also have a part of us that is eternal, that loves transformation. I call it human spirit. And that part knows that change is useful. That's the part that brought you here today, okay? That part can go beyond the thermostat effect. Show you a little bit more of how I mean. Now, don't freak out. This is a simple diagram, and I'm going to explain it to you. On the left side, right over here, we got going up and down is energy or vibration. Now, on the bottom part going this way, we've got time, right? This is our life this way. So if we're cruising along in our life within our vibrational set point, and then something happens, that's what this red circle is. It is an event that has emotion to it. And the end product of any event, a strong event, produces an emotion. And when that happens, the amplitude, the energy, gets bigger. See how that wave is bigger inside there? When that happens, we do two things very powerfully and automatically, 99% of the time subconsciously. We form beliefs about how we are and how the world is, and we make certain decisions about what we will do or not do again in order to never experience that thing that hurt, right? Survival, yes. Problem, when we go forward in our lives from there, the rest of our life is governed by that amplitude of emotion that happened back there, by the beliefs that we created, the decisions we made. So then, we can watch The Secret and think, yes, I just have to envision, I just have to vision, make intentions, then it will all be fine. But it doesn't work, right? It's because you can do all the affirmations and wishful thinking you want, but if we don't create the energy to overcome that patterning from before, it's not going to change. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you had this experience? So what do we need to change the patterning? We need energy. We need vibration. We need an amplitude of energy that's greater than what happened at that previous event. Right now, two main ways you can do that. One, pretty rare, yet it can happen if we make a really powerful decision, say, that's it, from now on I am doing this, or I'm never doing this. Works rarely. Though, probably somebody who said, I am never going to smoke a cigarette again, and they never did again in their entire life. Most people, though, doesn't work quite that simply. Right? So what most of us need is repetition. We need to, overcome that patterning over and over again because we've lived with it for so long, right? So breath, emotion, repetition, that's what allows us to reprogram those subconscious creations. Now, Melissa, I love what this woman created. I love what she did. Some years ago, when I was leading trainings in Bali, I thought it would be fun to create a contest. And so literally what I did is I gave away one free space in my training, which at the time I think was about $6,000. I think we even paid her airfare, in fact. And what we said is, opened it up to anybody that wants to enter the contest, say in a video why you want to take this training and what you will do with it. Right now, notice the words that Melissa uses here. I grappled with that voice that says, I am not good enough. I don't deserve this. What does that sound like, by the way? Right? That's the voice that was created at some event like this in her life, right? That I somehow tricked people. Hear that? That's imposter syndrome, right? Well, Melissa, I just talked to her recently too, actually, right? She did the work, and what an amazing, hardworking woman she is. And last time I talked to her, she just got back from India where she was working in an orphanage because she wanted to give back to create more vibrancy in the world. Now, hey, here we are. We're up to the third major point. Are you with me? We got just a little bit more to go on this trip. Every orchestra needs a conductor. When I was a kid, I was in the band and actually started college as a music major. I thought I was going to be a symphony musician until honestly I realized how much work was involved, and I wasn't passionate enough about it to do 6 hours of work a day. And that's when I practiced a day. That's when I got into philosophy, which led me here. So I'm grateful. Now, one of the things I got to experience, and if you've never experienced this, consider yourself lucky. Before the conductor steps up and taps his or her baton, all the musicians are playing on their own, and that is called cacophony. That is called pain. It does not sound like music, yet when the conductor brings them all together, whoo, that becomes music. Now, another word for this same principle is satsang. From Sanskrit or Pali, sat means truth. Sang from Anga means a gathering of people in the name of truth. Now, two of my greatest heroes here, Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., they knew about this, right? They led people, and it wasn't their work, it was getting people together that made such profound changes in the world. And you know about this also because you've had the experience, no doubt, of going to a concert of some musicians that you love, and you get everybody in the audience and they're just grooving along to it and the vibes are really high. How does that work? Right? The band, the musician, is creating a coherence inside themselves and they're transmitting that out, and we are all in training to it, right? So the word coherence I just used, I first learned from the Heart Math Institute. And man, oh man, they are doing such amazing work these days. Really amazing research and the science behind what we're talking about. Different types of coherence. There's brain and heart coherence. And if we breathe into our heart for 2 minutes, we create coherence that changes our state immediately. Right? And then there's social coherence where, like us right now, coming together, even in different parts of the world, we are coming to the same vibration. We are, what's the word? Entraining. And then part of what Heart Math is measuring right now is when some of us do this, enough of us do it, we can create a coherence that affects the entire earth. And they've measured this, and it's really amazing what's happening with this, right? Same principle applied differently, mentoring, right? Which means, you know, we don't necessarily always have to learn the hard way. Just like this more experienced teacher here is sharing with the young woman some things so she doesn't have to have the same struggle with it. Just like Oprah Winfrey credits Maya Angelou as being her mentor and helping her become who she's become, right? In NLP, they talk about it, NLP meaning neuro-linguistic programming, as modeling. And even though these women are beautiful, I don't mean modeling in modeling beauty. I mean modeling as in we learn from others who've created success in ways that we want. Now, when I was studying writing years ago, Ernest Hemingway was one of my models, one of my mentors, one of my teachers. And he said something exactly fitting to this. He said, if you want to write, only read the best, as in only read the best writers, because you're taking that on, you're in training to that, you're modeling that. Now, an important thing to note though, and what's very powerful here, is that we can model and study from others certain aspects. We don't have to take on everything of who they are, right? So Ernest Hemingway, incredible teacher for writing. When it comes to vibrancy, mental health, not my hero, blew his brains out, right? Okay, so what's another word for that? Discernment. Discernment means being choosy about what we are taking in, right? So we all know that expression. You are what you eat. Yes, and we think of it physically. I told you about the standard American diet that led me to be fat, right? It also leads us to doing what everyone else is doing, which a lot of what that is in the world is upset, misery, pessimism, negativity, illness, right? So if we follow the herd, that's what we tend to get. So discernment, Jim Rohn said this, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And we know that. So we get discerning if we're really wanting to create the vibration of vibrancy. Who's uplifting? Who's helping me become who I want? We get discerning about what we take in from media to news to food. All of it counts. Now, this is the thing that my mother didn't understand when I was a boy. When she said, when are you going to get a real job? And here I was investing all this time and energy and money into learning about myself. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, 100% certain now, that it is the only guaranteed investment. And you know this too, because you're here, right? You're learning, right? So me, I figured it out recently. I've spent more than 500,000, and better said than spent, I've invested in personal and spiritual development, right? Because I love it, because every time I learn and grow, my life gets richer, my service gets better, the world gets better, right? Money's not the only way, of course, though, that you can invest in your vibrant life. How else can you do it? Learning, continuing to learn, literally growing new synaptic connections, neurogenesis through learning, right? Practice, right? And by practice, that's another word for doing the work in some sense. And I love this, that practice doesn't make perfection. What it makes is progress. And that's so key, because one of my favorite definitions for happiness, progress towards something that's meaningful to you. What is most important in your life? Really? Your state of being, your happiness, right? We have all these other vehicles that we think will get us there. Ultimately, though, why not go straight to the source and make progress towards something that's meaningful to you, right? How else to invest in your vibrant life? Take the lesson here and get some mentoring, and as well, become a mentor, teach others, because when you teach, you get to learn even more, and there's an incredible satisfaction from that. As one of my mentors, Tony Robbins, said, the secret to living is giving. And I know for me, the more people I am able to help, and I'm so lucky that this is my world, my profession, the better I feel also, right? So more than my profession, I'll be honest with you, really it's a mission. It's my dharma. And my vision is that the entire world is living this vibration of vibrancy, not knowing about it here, that it's a world where people are passionate, alive, thrilled, grateful, where love is normal, where kindness is the law, where we are engaged in work that is fulfilling to us. And I know that that's possible. How do I know that, by the way? Yeah, the new science shows us anything is possible, right? This is one of the, I was born in the 1960s, and one of the buzzwords, buzz phrases that came from the 60s, Eldridge Cleaver started, there's no more neutrality in the world. You're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. Just like Einstein said, you can't solve a problem by the same level of consciousness that created it. In other words, we have to change our vibration to get a different solution. Right? So here's my big question, y'all, as we come to our conclusion. If not us to fulfill this mission to change the world, to create our own lives into masterpieces, who's going to do it? And if not now, when's it going to happen? Right? So a little more, again, another one of my heroes, Marianne Bailey, came to one of my trainings, and very, she seemed to me at first a delicate woman. I had no idea the power that was in her. And she also really did the work. She stayed with it, including, the parts that were challenging. And I'll be honest with y'all, if you're really going to create transformation, to create the life you want, to make changes, it's not always easy. It's not always comfortable, right? It means sticking with it. You can absolutely do it. Anybody can. A lot of people give up because they don't know what we're talking about. They don't understand it, and they don't know within them the power to do the work to create it. Now, Marianne is someone who did, and she did amazing stuff. I talked to her a couple months ago. She is right now working in London on the very first, it's a government-sponsored project for an entirely solar-powered car, right? Annette, did some amazing work and is now in Perth, Australia, helping many people through teaching, right? Julie Ann Mills, one of my favorite psychics, teachers, healers. When I first started working with her, right, and you could see what a beautiful woman, she's so talented on so many levels, she didn't know it herself. She needed to go beyond what was known to experience something else. And because she did, right, she's helping so many people now, right? Aaron, similar story. Again, an incredible teacher, East Coast of Australia. And the last one I will share with you for now, y'all, is just because it's such a fun story in a way. And I don't have a picture because this person is famous. You'd know her if I was to tell you about her, and to protect her privacy, we shall call her Agnes. Now, Agnes came to me because she'd had a series of synchronicities, which we could call entrainment, that were telling her that something was going on, and she really got the information that she needed to pay attention to this. And she knew in her heart, she'd done so much work for other people, she needed to create a project for herself that was engaging her own creativity, right? And a lot of her work had been promoting other people's stuff, interviewing other people. She didn't know what the project was going to be for herself, but what we were working on is saying, you don't need to know the form of it. You just keep doing a workflow, applying this formula, clear intention, elevated emotion. And she had some phenomenal breakthroughs, like breakthroughs where my eyes were wide open, like, whoa, wow. Right? And she didn't know about any of this stuff, meditation or spiritual practice, any of this in the beginning, right? She just, followed the coaching and did the work. So she was making such amazing progress with all of this. I said, you know what we need to do, Agnes, so to speak? I said, you need to practice this skill, get better at it so that you can do even more good in the world, create even more transformation for yourself and others. And how you're going to do that is to create something out of thin air by applying that formula, clear intention, elevated emotion, that doesn't even matter, right? And she's such a giving, generous, selfless person. I said, just to make it a little more fun and challenging, I said, do something for yourself. Nothing important, nothing big, but that doesn't matter. And she's like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. That sounds, I said, yeah, you can do it, fine. So she said, okay, I'll do it. So she tells me a week later, right, when we had our next connection, what happened. She said, well, the first day after we talked, I decided that I'm going to get flowers sent to me. Right? She's like, very seldom happens. There's no holiday. There's no reason anybody would send me flowers. Literally, I haven't had flowers sent to me in 40 years. So, but it's not impossible. It's not like the biggest thing. So I figured that would be a good one. Okay, great. First day passes, no flowers. Okay, that's all right. Second day passes, no flowers. So she's going into the third day, and she says, I love this. She tells me about this later. She says to herself, well, maybe that was too big, as if the universe can't handle getting flowers sent to her. So she decides to change it. Flowers sent to somebody around me, not to her specifically, right? So it's near the end of the third day. She's just finishing her show. She's in the broadcasting booth, right? The glass is there and everything. She can see her colleague about to come in and take over. And he's sitting there and then suddenly disappears. And she knows she's going down to answer the door, comes back up. What's he carrying? You got it. A big bouquet of flowers. They were for her, right? And then she told me after, you know where they came from? I was scheduled to do an interview for somebody 2 months ago. They canceled without notice, and they felt badly about that. And 2 months later, they sent me flowers as an apology. Can't make this stuff up. So, all right, y'all. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. There is no coherence in any of us being on our own, right? Satsang is a gathering of people in the name of truth. So if you are committed to, up for living the vibration of vibrancy, taking this information further in your life, up for raising your frequency, then let's connect. And what I mean by that is I would love to meet you. I would love to support you. And what I have done quite literally is cleared my schedule for the next few days so that we have a chance to meet if you would like to, but it's not for everybody. So this is for you if, right, you're really up for it. You want to raise your frequency. You're a healer, light worker, therapist. This is part of what you do professionally. You're going to make more of an impact in the world because of what we do, right? You have now already a spiritual practice. You have had some kind of spiritual awakening, right? If you really want to be part of this planetary solution, you know that we need to do something together. This is not for you, right? If you're not willing to actually do the work or follow the coaching. No judgment, but I can't help you if that's the case. If you think you are a victim and you're into complaining and you're avoiding things, then I also can't help you. And if you prefer to go it alone, do it the hard way, then no judgment again, but I can't help you with that. And if you already feel like life is at its maximum for you, well, then there's no benefit in us connecting. Let's leave the breakthrough strategy session for those who really will value it, right? It'll mean something to them. And what you'll get in a breakthrough strategy session is greater clarity, which is potential power. It's power when you get clear on who you are, what you want, and how to get there, right? And it'll help you to get results in your life right away through that clarity and that power. Now, fair notice, you snooze, you lose, right? I have cleared my calendar for the next few days, and there are way more of you than there are of me. So if you want to take advantage of this offer, then I encourage you to do it right away. Act fast. And to make it clear, there's no cost, no obligation. And you might then wonder, so Daniel, why are you doing this? I would wonder if I was you. Two reasons. One is because I love it, right? I love talking to people about this stuff. You can feel, no doubt, my enthusiasm for this whole topic. It's my life. It's my life's work. And I love to meet people and understand what's going on and to help them with it. And some of you will perhaps want to work with me in some other way, join one of my programs. And if so, that is awesome. I would love it. And if not, that is awesome. Totally fine, right? So that's what I am up to and why, right? So again, if you want to take advantage, I encourage you to do it right away. It's just my website, danielaaron.com/apply, and then we will connect, right? So that's it, y'all. That is the vibration of vibrancy. That is the information, the cutting edge, science, experience, anecdotal, all of it, so that you are more empowered now to create your life into a masterpiece, to really live the vibration of vibrancy. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you were here, that you're interested in this, that you are part of the solution. And I'm grateful for you giving me the chance to share with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope we get a chance to meet in person. And until then, I'm Daniel Aaron, wishing you great vibrancy in your life.